Good evening and welcome to the, wow, that's really loud. Good evening and welcome to the 6 p.m. City Council meeting of June 17th, 2025. Please note all council members are present. I am going to turn the time over to Vice Chair Heyer to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand if you're able and join me in reciting the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please take a moment of silence with me. Thank you. Are there any acknowledgements?
Well, I'm happy to.
I was going to say, there
was such great stuff happening on the weekend. Yeah, we were at Juneteenth, celebrated at the amphitheater. I think it was like Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. I was only there on Saturday. And it was just a really wonderful celebration, so I appreciate the city's partnership on that.
Yeah, I too want to follow up with that. I had a really fun weekend as well, or at least Saturday. I started my day with a tour of the Marshall White Center, and then came down and ate some breakfast at one of our local restaurants, and then went on down to the farmers market, stopped by Juneteenth, and then went to the protest, and then back to Juneteenth, and it was just, there were a lot of people downtown, and so it was a really fun, vibrant weekend. So thank you to our Ogden Downtown Alliance, who helped us out with all of the maneuvering, and the OPD that helped us stay calm, and to all the people that volunteered for Juneteenth. So great weekend. With that, we have a lot of numbers tonight. So, Coralie, if you want to come up, that'd be awesome.
Okay. So I have for you tonight, for what is being proposed, is the year-end budget opening for the city. In the general fund, we're proposing increasing the budget by $24,875. Two of the items are being taken out of the contingent account and being used for software for legal and management services. And then CD had the Accelerate event and receive sponsorship revenue as part of that, and so we're recognizing that revenue and of $13,000. And then the city also received donations from Marshall White Center for swim lessons, and we're proposing to increase the revenue for donations by $11,875, and then the associated expenses of supplies, and then it'll also go for wages for temporary employees, so our part-time employees that will help teach those swim lessons. In the CIP fund, the proposed increase is $2,711,375, and this is to recognize 3 ramp grants that the city received that are for Bonneville Park, Lester Park for playground equipment, and Lester Park for the pickleball courts as well. And a UDOT grant that is also being received for a geotechnical study along Harrison Boulevard and Valley Drive for $25,000. And then as part of the new market tax credits that we received from the Marshall White, we are recognizing those of $2,123,500. And then in the water fund, As the city has been doing the construction of the new water line, we've had to use additional chemicals in the treatment of the water. And so we're recommending a use of retained earnings to help cover that increased expense of chemicals in the amount of $300,000. And then in the storm utility fund, we're proposing to recognize 3 grants that the city has received. The first one is for the Surf Wave project for just under $500,000, and then the federal OSG grant. A portion of that is state, and a portion of it is federal, and the total grant together is $175,000. And then in the medical services fund, every year we receive a per capita grant, and that is we're proposing recognizing that grant for $8,350. And then in fleet and facilities and IT and the IT fund, both of those, since they're internal service funds, as services are provided to departments, the revenue it's charged out to departments, and then revenue is coming back into those internal service funds, and we monitor that throughout the year. And so in the Fleet and Facilities Fund, we're proposing increasing that revenue by $400,000, and in the IT fund, we're proposing increasing that by $500,000. Sorry, Fleet and Facilities was $400,000. And then finally, in the Miscellaneous Grants Fund, you can tell our grant writers have been very busy this year. We're proposing recognizing a potential grant for Kiesel Avenue in the amount of $25,000, a federal planning grant for the CLG grant in the amount of $10,000, and then a police grant that is related to homelessness in the amount of $27,000. Sorry, I'm so sorry. And then for fire, recognizing a grant from UDOT for the lockbox grant that was awarded from Rocky Mountain Power, and then a sustainability donations grant for the air quality testing in the amount of $13,325 for a total increase to the budget of $4,689,300. And I apologize, I forgot to advance the slides. So, and so we're proposing you consider adopting the ordinance, which increases the budget by that amount. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there any questions for Coralie before she sits down?
Before I sit down.
I have one really quick question, which is it's random more than anything.
Okay.
Marshall White Center donations.
Yes.
Is that something that we can do or other people can do? I know that maybe to offset some of the people, like for swim lessons.
So I believe so. They should be able to do it. And then in the instance of this donation, it was specified what they wanted it to be used for. And so in our software, we're actually able to track that and show exactly how it is used.
Chair, are you referring to offsets for access to fees and so on?
Yeah.
So there has been some discussion about that, and we got some more work to do, but we're talking to some companies that are interested in helping with potentially with some donations to grant kids access. So that's something that we're working on, and maybe some cleanup to ease some of the confusion around the fee discounts.
Yeah,
but we
awesome.
haven't done all our homework yet, so we're not quite ready, but we're working on it.
So for instance, this donation was specific to pay for 300 swim lessons.
Oh,
so
that's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's good. Good to know. All right. This is a public hearing. If there was anyone that would like to come up to the podium and speak about and this is for the 2024-2025 budget. So just to know that it's from the year-end adjustments. So just trying to, I don't see any movement in the chambers, but I just want to make sure there's no one online right now.
Chair, seeing no one coming forward.
Hold on, let me just make sure.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, looks like we're good.
Chair, seeing no one coming forward, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to close the public hearing by Councilmember Meyer, second by Councilmember Chaburka. This is a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right.
If there's no more discussion, I'd make a motion at this point to adopt the proposed ordinance 2025-15.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Ritchie, second by Councilmember Blair to adopt proposed ordinance 2025-15. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Councilmember Graff.
Yes.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer.
Aye.
Chair White.
Aye, that passes. All right. One down, a few to go. All right. Next is the fiscal year 2026 to 2030 capital improvement plan. Presentation by Steve Burton.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening, Council. So I'm going to, thanks. I'm just going to take a few minutes and go over the Council's review of the proposed 2026 to 2030 capital improvement plan, and then I'll also talk about the specifics of the document as well. So this plan is a 367-page document that outlines the capital improvements that the administration plans on working on throughout the next 5 years. You can see it's a 5-year plan. It outlines funding sources. It includes the bulk of the document itself is project briefs that explain the project and things like funding for projects. As a little bit of background information, as you're all well aware, the council adopts budget goals each year, including goals related to the capital improvement plan and reviewing and approving that document. So city code tells us what constitutes a capital improvement plan project, and it essentially comes down to projects that cost more than $50,000 that expand or improve the city's physical infrastructure. You can see here it includes design and construction of improvements like buildings and roads and streets, parks, utilities. It can also include rehabilitation and reconstruction projects, and capital improvement projects can also include things like land acquisition and leasing, long-term leasing of land, as well as projects that require debt financing in certain cases. And then lastly here on this slide, capital projects can include public facilities that may be fully or partially funded by impact fees. As you can see here on this slide, the major funding sources for capital improvement projects generally include the general fund, which is primarily through BDO lease revenue. There's also federal and state grants that the city uses for certain capital projects. Other funding sources include PNC road funds and active transportation funds that can come from things like the gas and sales tax. You can see here there's also enterprise funds that come from user fees from utilities and services like the airport and golf, medical and the medical enterprise as well. And then bonds can also be a funding source for projects. And there's also others like ramp grants and RDA TIF funding. So currently, when the council reviews this CIP, the capital improvement plan, it does so at the same time as you look at the budget. As staff, we think it's beneficial to do that because it allows the council to view the capital improvement plan as this five-year aspirational plan, which it is. But you're also in reviewing it with the budget, you're also able to see that incremental progress on projects as funding is done through the budget each year for the first year of the CIP. So a little bit about the review process throughout the month of May. So last month, the council, as you heard from each department, you saw their department budget, but you also saw the capital improvement projects that they were proposing that are in this plan. And the idea behind all that is so that so that there's the possibility of adopting the CIP with the budget in June. And then the review schedule, like I talked about, talked a little bit about it, but to just kind of give an overview of that, early May, council staff, we introduced the capital improvement plan. And then the next weeks you heard from CED and fire, as well as management services, public services, and the projects that were proposed by those departments. And then on June 3rd, the council set the public hearing date for today. And after the public hearing, the council may adopt the plan. And then later this year in fall, what we've done the past couple of years is we put together a ranking survey for the council to inform the administration on projects that you'd like to see in the future capital improvement plan. And that ranking is typically turned into administration at the beginning of, actually probably the end of the year, so that they can look at that as they're preparing the documents at the beginning of the year. So state code, it requires that no public improvements be constructed or authorized unless the project has been determined to conform with the general plan. So because of that, the city code, it sends the capital improvement plan to the planning commission first to determine compliance with the general plan. And on April 2nd, the planning commission confirmed that it does comply with the general plan and forwarded that determination of compliance. So just to give you a brief overview of the projects proposed, that you can see here, there's 92 projects in total. 27 of them are new projects, with a total funding proposed for the 5-year plan of $249.3 million. Let's see. There's also down below, there's a breakdown of projects by type and their totals. You can see that there's 42 perpetual ongoing projects. Typically, those are things like utility maintenance, street maintenance, and things like that. You also have 45 one-time projects and 5 ramp projects. So let's see. So this slide is going to show the first year of the CIP. So one important thing to note is several projects in this 5-year document are not funded are not proposed to be funded in FY26, though there are several projects that are proposed to have funding in future years. I think an example I'll share of this are things like a couple of things that were discussed in the work session were the Lester Park and the community splash pad. If you look through that document, you'll see that the funding for these projects are proposed in future years. So for example, the community splash pad, there's $400,000 proposed and expected in 2027, and then another $400,000 in 2028. Similar funding proposed for projects like Lester Park, not necessarily funded this coming fiscal year, but in following. So this slide will also show the future plan funding that I just kind of briefly talked about for the remaining 4 years, and then also the total project funding for 5 years. From this specifically is from the general funds. And this is the same breakdown in funding, but for the enterprise funds. And then down here at the bottom is a total for FY26 funding in the CIP at $29.7 million, with the total project funding for all projects at that $249.3 million. So here we have the proposed first year funding in the CIP document. On the left and on the right is what's proposed in the FY26 budget. As you know, sometimes they don't always add up. They don't always align, I should say. If there is a bond proposed to be taken out in the future, or if there's some anticipated grant funding in the future. But in this instance, the two line up. So in the packet for this item, and this is something that we've done for a little while, but obviously it's not intended to be read from this screen. I think if you tried, it would be really a really grainy image, but it is in the packet, and you can look at all of the projects and see the project summaries. It'll show total cost by department. It'll show project number, the administration's ranking of the project, things like which strategic plan directive the project aligns with, and the total project cost. It'll also show you first year funding and how much is proposed in the FY26 budget and future funding plan. So next steps, this tonight is obviously the public hearing. You have the opportunity to consider final adoption of this document, and then in the fall we'll revisit and we'll do that ranking opportunity for the council to look at projects that have not yet been fully funded or have not been complete yet. Happy to answer, or I guess happy to hear some questions. I may need some help from finance if there's really specific questions, but yeah, that's what I've got for you.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Any questions for Steve right now? No questions? All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. So this is a public hearing as well. If you have any questions regarding the capital improvement plan or have any comments, please come up, state your name, and
Hi, Travis Pate. Many of you know me, but I was looking at the capital improvement plan, and I think there's some amazing things in there. And when you just get that many numbers, it's just absolutely phenomenal. Especially when I'm so used to just things from the newspaper. They cost a lot less. One was a couple $1,000s for an entire year's budget. One of the things that I looked is the 25th Street to Jefferson to Harrison project. And I think as far as restoration and those types of things, I think it'd be good. If you look on the south side of the 2500, or the 600 block of 25th Street, the sandstone curbing is all still there, and it kind of tapers off to a cobble. I feel it's unfortunate that there wasn't more city planning as we did the water line and extracted the tracks from 25th Street when we did that water line, because if you look down Jefferson and we still have that little trace of the historic trolley tracks, we're saying, hey, this is the creative art district, but anything creative and that could have been designed in-house, we just tore out and got rid of the historic infrastructure. And UTA even said that it was trying to be planned at least to Monroe, and so they would have torn out all that historic curb and gutter. And I think that there needs to be something done, particularly with it being right next to the library, part of the creative district, that we need to look and say if it's a restoration, then yes, we'll keep that curb and gutter. But if it means just tear out the curb and gutter and pour concrete, then I think we need to revisit that plan a little bit better. Because the only other thing is, fortunately, our neighbors on that corner were at the UTA meeting. The bus stop that's currently in front of the Baptist Church was going to be right in front of their house, and it said no historic impact. The one residential place on that street, and they were just going to tear up their curb and gutter and put that stop right in front of their house instead of down where it was actually more appropriate to fit the commercial district of the old Deseret Gym, the church, other improvements such as the Forest Service building. And so I think we need to be more mindful of historic preservation. I didn't see anything in the entire budget towards historic preservation. So I think just as we've increased art budgets, there needs to be something in this budget, or as we amend it, towards historic preservation. And then the Second Street I appealed years ago as we were giving away First Street, like, oh, let's gift it to the developer there at the old Waynesguards Market. And I thought, wait, times, no, not gift it, trade them, get the second street frontage, give them the first street frontage. I was ignored by Greg Montgomery and everyone else, and that's really unfortunate. Fortunately, engineering called me back and said, we do have, because of the state there at 5 Points, we do have some accommodations that'll be there, but more likely we'll probably end up buying that property instead of just having it traded. And so I think when some of the comments come, I think you guys have been amazing in the last year or so, meticulous with notes and follow-up, but I think long term, those need to be followed up further because, like I said, why are we going to buy property when we could have just traded for the second street? So thanks for your time.
Thanks,
and
Travis.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Anyone else?
Chair, I'd make a motion that we close the public hearing on this item.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Ritchie, second by Vice Chair Heyer to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Just need a motion.
Chair, unless there's other discussion, I'd like to make a motion.
Sure.
Make a motion to adopt proposed ordinance 2025-16.
I'll second. Go ahead, Bart. Second. Bart.
Oh, sorry.
Mark.
Okay.
Somebody, any,
Did you want to move that allocated, unallocated? Sorry. Wait, just.
Is that done here or is that done in the
I thought it
budget
was in the
itself?
budget,
Okay.
right? Is that right, Rich? It goes in the budget?
I thought so.
I thought so
That
too.
was my understanding.
Okay, that's fine. All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Graff, second by Councilmember Blair to adopt proposed ordinance 2025-16. This is a roll call vote.
It was a motion by me.
I'm sorry.
No big deal.
Motion
No big
by Councilmember Chaburka. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Somebody down here, anyway.
Way down there. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Councilmember Chaburka,
Aye.
Councilmember Graff,
Aye.
Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Ritchie,
Aye.
Councilmember Blair,
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer,
Aye.
Chair White.
Aye, that passes. All right, next up is the presentation for the enterprise fund transfers. Janine Ellersmith.
Thank you, council members. Here to talk about the Enterprise Utility Fund transfers. These are done every year. There's a notification required by the state to notify all residents that these transfers occur. And for transfers that are not directly related to the operation of the fund, we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So the enterprise funds are accounted for separately. They're intended to support themselves through user fees and charges. And the enterprise funds that have transfers to the general fund are the water, sanitary, sewer, storm sewer, and the refuse utilities. That notification, that's actually a copy of last year's, but the notification goes out with the utility billings. And so because those are billed over a month-long period, a quarter of the city is billed every week, the notifications actually go out starting in May so that we can get all the notices to everyone in time for the public hearing that's scheduled for today. The transfers are made to the general fund sort of in lieu of property tax and franchise tax. Other utilities, private utilities like Dominion, Rocky Mountain, the cable, the satellite providers, they all pay those franchise and property taxes that come to the city eventually. And so this transfer is intended to do that, and it's just treated as a cost of doing business for private utilities, and the city is treating it as cost of doing business for the utilities as well. So here's the transfer amounts. You can see that for the notices that go to the residents, the transfers are based on the percentages of the transfers are based on the total expenditures, so total budget. So we have 3.5 million from water, 1.8 million from sanitary sewer, 800,000 from storm, and 935,000 from refuse, for a total of just a little over $7 million. And you can see the percentages of total enterprise funds: 9, 10, 8, 10%. That's important because generally when we speak about it staff to staff or staff to council, other elected officials, we're talking about a 17%, so a 6, and a 5. So I just wanted to explain why there's a little bit of a difference there. So when the finance is calculating the franchise, property, and administrative charges that come to the city from the utilities, they're basing those just on charges for services, not the total budget, because the total budget has additional other revenues, bonding and grant funding and stuff like that. So it's just based on charges for services. And so you can see if you take the total amounts that were in the previous slide and divide that 3.4 million by 2, you get the 6% franchise and the 6% property tax. And then there is an administrative charge that the city charges for covering the human resources, payroll, attorneys, risk management, all of those services that are provided to the utilities that are directly related to the operations of the utilities. And that's why they're not actually noticed to the residents, because it is related to the business of the utilities. Any questions about that? Okay, we did a couple of years ago, we were getting a lot of questions from residents, good questions, about the administrative fee and about what would happen to utility rates and the general fund if these transfers were not made from the utilities to the general fund. So the city contracted with LRB, that's the city's financial advisors, to do a summary or do a report. So that was the scope of work, to determine that whether that 5% was a reasonable amount for administrative fee, and what would happen if the utility rates to the utility rates if transfers didn't occur, and what would happen to the general fund if transfers didn't occur. So the proposed tax for FY 26, that should say, budget is $7 million, and the anticipated property tax revenue in 26 is approximately $23 million. So it's about 30% of property tax revenues, if you look at it that way. The LRB study did look at that and determined that the increase would at least 33% would be required in property tax revenue to the taxpayers to replace that, and that's based on the 23 revenues that the study was done on. And that they also determined that the savings on the utility rates would be less than the additional property taxes required to replace the funds. It's another reason why we can spread the cost of property tax and franchise tax to the nonprofits, like Weber State and Intermountain. All of those entities don't pay property tax, and they're not franchises, so they don't pay franchise tax. But through, they all use water or utilities, and so it's a way of kind of spreading that, broadening that tax base to get a little bit more revenue and keep the property tax rates lower. Based on 23 records, tax exempt properties were 13.5% of the total value. But I would add that generally, because the tax exempt properties are tax exempt, they don't always value them. So they're undervalued on the tax records. So I'm sure that it's much higher percentage than just the 13.5%. So that is the transfers presentation. There's no separate action on this. The law just requires a separate public hearing, and any action related to the transfers actually occurs with the adoption of the budget, because that's where the action takes place. So any questions?
Any questions for Janine? I have a quick one. We as always, we receive, thank you for going through what LRB did. I think one of the things that is also important is to note that we are actually looking at what other cities are doing around, making sure that we're not out of balance or out of alignment with what other cities are doing. So I think that that's something coming up as part of FY26 for us to look at. So making sure that we're just in line with other city actions.
Yeah, and where ours is, essentially 12% to meet those, I noticed that Provo's is like almost 20% of their total revenues for their general fund.
Janine,
Yeah.
Can you go back a couple slides? I know we get questions about this all the time. One more, or go forward now.
Oh, sorry.
That
There.
last little bullet point, the savings on utility rates would be less than the additional property taxes required. Can you just explain that just a little more in depth for the record?
So I'm not sure I can explain it in depth,
Or just,
but according to LRB and their study, so if they lowered the utility, so the argument is, well, if those transfers don't occur, my utility rates will go down. But in doing the calculations, their utility rates would go down, but the increase to their property taxes would need to be more, because now the tax base is now smaller, right? Because it's not spreading out across the properties of the nonprofits. So the property taxes would go up more, so it wouldn't be equal, right?
Okay.
So they would pay more in property taxes and less in utility rates, but it wouldn't be the same amount. So that's why it doesn't equal out.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Thank you. All right, this is a public hearing as well. Please come up to the podium and state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
So I'm not going to try to get every little bullet point of the dynamics, but I think the enterprise fund and the utility aspects, particularly for overseeing and covering the nonprofits, they didn't really answer the 5% administrative fee. So to speak, if there's a windfall year, is it still 5% of the gross total versus a flat administrative fee? So that'd be the question that I have with regards to our side of administering that money and the transfers. I know a lot more things are done electronically, so it's not really as in-depth and intensive that way. And then I guess the only other thought is kind of if part of that 5% can be towards an audit of how we're doing with the utilities and how they're working with us. I know there was the shared trench up Ogden Canyon, which everybody was like, yeah. So everybody was able to get their utilities in at the same time instead of coming back later and potholing and digging and other aspects of. And so I'd also just say if part of that administrative fee could be going back to the companies, if we already have the Wasatch Front Regional Council, we have the WACOG, we have all those other aspects. Do we actually have that with utilities to say, okay, what is our infrastructure in the event of a natural or man-made disaster? And what are our safe holds? Where can we, if we are using the churches as refuge points, what kind of power do we have? What kind of grid do we have to feed those as? Because you see them nationwide, there's always the shelter at a school or a church or other public building. So I think part of that tax that we're transferring, if some of that can be used to say, how are we doing? What can we do as far as our emergency preparedness plan? And so that was the part that I have, because otherwise, again, the shared trenches, those types of things like we've done. So examine obviously the canyons and the foothills to make sure we don't have power lines come down and spark anything that would cause irreparable damage there. And the only other thing too is 2 years ago I came here and said, what happened to the 629-8221, which is the non-emergency dispatch? I said, did it switch to 395? So I've been down in 395 religiously for non-emergency dispatch. it quit working 2 days ago. So then I went, wait a minute, used my cell phone, called it, but it's a CenturyLink thing. So part of our audit possibly needs to be going back to those companies and saying, how are we doing? Because both 629 and 395 work from a cell phone, but my CenturyLink landline, nothing. So I put in a work order to them, but I think if it comes from this body to say, hey, we want to not overload 911, but if we do have a host of CenturyLink customers that are not able to dial out because of something in your switching, then I think, like I said, some of the audits just say back and forth saying, how are we doing? What can we do better to help you? How can you help us? So thank you.
Thanks, Travis. Hi.
Hello, my name is Joseph D. Graffenried. I think I'm the only person that showed up after they got that letter. And I gather that because I'm a new resident, that's probably part of the reason why. Sounds like you guys have been doing this for a while. I pay about $123 a month for water. My electricity is usually about $20 or $30. That's just not very normal to me. I'm from the East Coast where utilities in general are extremely expensive, but seeing this money flow out that is, a substantial part of my property taxes that was hidden in the water bill. I was very lucky when I moved here to even know that the water bill was going to be so high. I was very, very careful when I came to purchase my first home here to understand what my monthly costs would be. And this was the big sticker shock. It wasn't the property taxes. I'm anticipating paying about $2,800 this year in property taxes, which is very reasonable. And I appreciate your explanation about why we do that. I understand it better now. But just please remember, this is a lot of money to be paying for water, and to be paying for water that I don't use. From my understanding of how our water bills are done in the city is that almost all of the cost is just for having a line. And because I have a 1-inch line on my house, I don't know if someone bribed someone or what, but the people in my development are not happy that they're paying an extra $60, $70 a month for water because of that. I don't want to go off on a tangent because that is not related, but to see the water bill to property tax ratio be so dramatic is just, it feels unreasonable to me as a resident. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, my name's Kerry Wangsgard. I can't remember when we started making this transfer from the enterprise fund to the general fund, but I don't think it was that long ago. I mean, granted, I'm old, but it seems like maybe not more than 10 years, maybe 7, 8. I don't know when we started doing this. When I sit down and prepare my budget, every dollar has a name. That dollar goes to a certain account. If I take a dollar and I designate that's going to be towards my mortgage and my housing costs, then that's what that dollar is used for. If I take a look at that budget and then all of a sudden realize that, hey, I've got quite a bit of money in that budget, I'm going to take some of that out and I'm going to take a trip to Hawaii. So I take the money out of that housing expense fund, mortgage fund, and I take the trip to Hawaii. When I return, all of a sudden I realize that, I've got a major improvement or a major expense to my home, whether it's a roofing charge or a new sewer line, whatever, and all of a sudden I don't have the money to cover that expense because I took a trip to Hawaii. When we start transferring funds from the enterprise fund for whatever reason, I don't think that's appropriate money management from everything that I've taught or that I've been taught. If you've got a dollar designated for that purpose, to me, that's what it should be used for. To go in and say, well, we got the property taxes and we've got the enterprise funds and we need to charge an administrative fee. I remember there was a time we ended up paying the city entered into a contract for some outfit in Washington to handle the utility payments. You don't do that anymore. But in essence, that would have been a fee that would have had to come out. I'm sure that you contracted with them and that they charged a fee for doing that. If there's an administrative fee, whether it's for human resources or other things that the city provides to water, sewer, and gas, then I think that should be a charge. It doesn't need to show on the utility bill, but that should be something that's in the enterprise fund's budget. And then you've got a more accurate accounting for, here's the expenses of the enterprise fund. This is what we need coming in. And whether we're running a surplus or a shortfall, you can determine that. But to me, it's creative financing as far as moving those funds over. I think it denies you the opportunity to make your case to the citizens of Ogden if you need a property tax or sales tax increase to go in and make that case to them. This way, you're just saying, oh, we've got money here, we're going to move it here, and we don't need to make our case to Ogden City residents. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, there's one hand online. Heath Sato.
Hi, Heath Soto, Ogden resident. Our sound system is still doing the feedback to the people on Zoom. Let me lower my volume so I can speak. I had actually a really good time talking to Justin and Janine about this exact issue when you guys did that great budget meeting thing in chambers and outside. And it makes a lot of sense to me why we've kind of gotten stuck in this loop of earning these monies this way. And if we just remove them from the water bill, it would increase our property taxes. But I think we need to find a way to get those funds out of the nonprofits in a different way, because the way it's currently set up is that people that rent, that have to pay a water bill, instead of it going into property taxes being paid by the owner, it ends up being put on them, and at that rate, it becomes a regressive tax to the renters. And I just think we need to, I know places that would then include that fee might charge more, but at least it'd be easier to tell across the board what your rent really is going to be in Ogden. And like the other property owner said, he was surprised by it as well. I think we need to untwist this knot and figure out how to make these funds without raising property taxes, and create a more honest system. I don't know if that's the best term, but that's basically what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Heath. Yeah, sure.
Deborah Darrington, Ogden residents. This was not a topic that I was going to speak on, but it is one that irritates me every month. I have a property that has a commercial line coming into it, even though it's not functioning as a commercial property. The base rate on that is $228 and some odd cents, whether there's a toilet that flushes or a drop of water that comes through it. We do try to maintain the grounds on there, and I hand water that, turning only we have automatic sprinklers, but I put them on manual so that I'm able to save money on that, because my water bill at that property will often go anywhere from $600 to $800 during the summer, which I can see why many of the owners of that property ended up going bankrupt, and it's very much from utilities. I have another property, residential, that not a toilet flushes, and the only water that runs through it is in the summer months. And again, that is hand watered and as minimal as we possibly can. We have put as much dryscape as we can without it looking like a rock front yard with weeds growing in it, which is starting to become a big problem in Ogden City. And I'm wondering if that's part of it, is people can't afford the base rate of their water bill, so let alone are they able to turn water on. Another issue with that is, again, the property 2 doors down from us didn't even turn their water on until about a week ago. And as I've driven through Ogden and noted the difference in lawns from the time that I started here and not, I think utilities are indeed in a roundabout way bankrupting some of our citizens, not just those that are on low income, but some of our moderate who are just incapable of affording those bills in the winter, let alone in the summer. So I can certainly relate to this gentleman here. I can't imagine as a young property owner having utility bills of that sort and trying to combat them. I'm not sure why they are so high in Ogden City, but if there is a way to mitigate that, it would greatly benefit our citizens of all income levels. Thanks.
Thank you. All right.
Chair, I'd make a motion that we close the public hearing on this item. Second it.
We have a motion to close the public hearing by Vice Chair Heyer, second by Councilmember Myers. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
There is no action to this, but maybe there are a few items that we can just have answered, and we might not know the answers to them. Does anybody know when we did start this?
Before 2010.
Janine does.
Before his time.
I remember talking about it with Council.
30 years.
It's 2010. I think because I remember Dan Schroeder came.
So the law changed in 2017, which is when the city started sending out the notices. So that's when it became more apparent, which is exactly what the legislature wanted to happen, that residents were aware that municipalities all across the state were doing this. But it's been a lot longer that the city's made these transfers. And I don't know exactly how long. I would say at least 25 years, probably more. But the city has always used the same percentages. So it's always been 6% property tax, 6% franchise, 5% administrative fee. And that's from day one that it was. So we haven't gone back to actually find when it actually started, but it would have been many, many years ago.
Thanks. And I think the comments that were made tonight were really good. And as we look forward on to how to maybe assess this, it will be really good to bring some of these comments in and see if there's ways to change that. So thank you.
Chair, I got to, it's come up a couple of times, twice tonight and times before. I don't think there's anybody in the room that knows the answer to this question. It's probably not for Janine, but the water meter size that dictates the base rate. And I'm kind of wondering if there's some ability for a homeowner to request that their meter get, at my house, I have a 3/4 meter, and it would be, and I'm used to what that is. I get plenty of water through a 3/4 meter. I don't need a 1-inch meter or bigger like some people have. Is there a way to change the meter size so that their base rate doesn't drive them bankrupt? And I don't think there's anybody in the room that could probably answer that, but engineering or water utility probably could. But something we got to look into.
I made a note.
Okay.
Great. Good point. Yeah. Great. Or from a commercial property to a
Yeah, I mean, if it's being used as a residential, it probably doesn't need as much water as if it were a commercial, and so therefore it probably ought to be qualified to be changed.
Yeah, and I don't know anything about why the 395 dispatch isn't working. So
I like the suggestion of the audit, though. I like that. And I just wanted to clarify for Travis, too, that it is a 5% no matter the year rather than a static fee. right now. Anyway.
All right. Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you. There is no action on this item. We have a presentation for the fiscal, 2025-2026 compensation increase. I'm looking over there. Executive Municipal Offices.
Okay. This is also a public hearing that does not require any action from the council. The state legislature in 2024 passed SB 91, which is now codified in Title 10 of the Utah Code, and it requires the county or a city governing body who is proposing increases for specified officers to notice and hold a public hearing. And the hearing must be held separately from any other hearing. So that's why we are holding it separately. So according to state law, the municipal executive officers are in the city are the chief, the CAO, an assistant CAO, city attorney, deputy attorneys, department head, deputy department heads, division managers, deputy division managers, chief and deputy assistant chiefs. And then there's also some levels in the public safety leadership like lieutenants and captains that would also fall into this area. On the right-hand side, the CAO, city treasurer, city attorney, city recorder, city engineer, those are all required by state law that the city appoint those. So the municipal executive officers is bigger than what statutory positions exist. I'm sure most of you remember that in 23 and 24, the Human Resources Division completed a compensation study with McGrath as the consultants. They went through a very deep dive into what the city was paying at the time. They analyzed all of the job descriptions. They actually talked with every department head, division manager to make sure that to see if there were any changes that needed to happen to those job descriptions. And they met individually with with leadership and analyzed the current schedules. And they also gathered a lot of market data. So these are the governmental agencies that they used to kind of get information from, and also special districts. So it was a very deep dive into the city's compensation policies at the time. As a result of that study, there were some things that came out of that. McGrath recommended that the Ogden City align their salary schedules to be average against market comparables, so not high, not low, just sort of average. We did make some changes to titles for upper management, and then adjust annually by the CPI urban, and then also budget to allow flexibilities within a job classification. And then in 2025, you did adopt the range model that they had proposed, both for public safety and for general employees. So for the fiscal year 25-26 budget, what is proposed is a 2.97% cost of living increase, and that's for all employees. And the impact of that is that it actually shifts all of the ranges. So let's say you get hired on as, an entry-level clerk and you're making $25,000 a year. Today, and you got hired last week, you're making $25,000 a year. July 1, if it's approved, they would get a 2.9% on top of that. It's an automatic increase to the bottom of the scale and to the top of the scale. Then, in addition to that, there's a 1.5 merit increase proposed for general employees, which includes municipal executive officers. And for that, it's a merit increase so that they must meet, anybody who is to receive that merit increase must meet expectations related to the job performance. It's a little bit different for public safety. They are on a step system, which general employees are not. General employees just have ranges for their positions. The proposal is for that 4% step increase, which is paid to them, and that is equal to their merit increase, which they receive on their anniversary date or their hire date. And it's just the same as for general employees. Public safety, they have to meet their expectations related to the job performance in order to qualify for that 4% step. So this is, you can see the current ranges for these positions, which are most of the municipal executive officers' positions. I didn't add in the lieutenants because they're slightly different ranges. So, for example, the council executive director, the bottom of the range is 145, and that shifts the range with that COLA to 149. And so you can see on the difference from what it would be on the lower end to what it would be on the higher end. We're not giving specific dollar amounts for every single employee that falls into this list because they all fall in different areas in their ranges, right? So some might be close to the top, some might be at the bottom, some might be in the middle, and that all would have different impacts. This COLA and potential merit would have different impacts on their individual salaries. So that's the impact of the COLA and what is proposed in the FY26 budget.
Great. Are there any questions for Janine? All right. This is a public hearing as well.
I did have just a quick question.
I'm sorry.
And then maybe I missed this. I thought that we had switched it to 2% instead of the 1.5.
Oh, you're right. That's my bad. It is 2%, which is in there. So 2% merit. I apologize.
Oh,
Thank
no,
you.
that's okay. I just was like,
I'm glad you caught
I
that.
missed something, but I believe it was 2%.
That's part of the amendment.
Yep.
I think the documents include the 2%, right?
Correct.
Based on the discussions in the work session, it appeared that everyone agreed that it should be 2%. So the documents in the budget that's currently before you includes a 2% merit increase. And the total additional cost of that was about $200,000.
But that is not part of the Schedule A1 amendments?
It is.
Yeah.
So are we voting on the A1 amendments today?
Yes.
That's in the budget.
So currently, these are the administrative officers that this is effectively. And the discussion on the approval of those same salary increases will come at a later time, the A1 amendments, or is it a part of this discussion now?
So the public hearing is specifically for the municipal executive officers. That's the information that needs to be highlighted so that residents are aware that managers in the city are getting increases. All of the employees are getting that same amount. So you're not voting on it separately.
This is the public hearing on this portion.
I'm sorry.
By the state statute.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Good question.
Okay, thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing as well. If you have any comments or questions, please come to the podium and state your name and. Great.
Chair, not seeing any movement. I'd make a motion that we close the public hearing on this item.
Second.
There is?
Carrie.
Are you coming?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, feel free. Sorry. Wait a second. Yeah.
Thank you.
Gotta be fast.
You do. It's fast.
Kerry Waingsgard again. In my former life when I was working, we had cost of living increases, but they were very small. What that allowed a manager to do is if there was an employee that you wanted to perhaps encourage to move on, you would give them that very minimal cost of living increase without having to go through the process of building a case to fire them. So when you go in and you do a cost of living that's the 2.97%. Sometimes to me, you're taking away from the manager the option of saying, well, gee, this employee, I would really like them to go somewhere else. And if you could control that through merit increases or allow that more on a merit increase aspect, to me, it gives the manager to hire better people and to create a department that has quality people in it, rather than anybody that shows up and is breathing, they get the increase, the COLA increase.
Thank you. All right, let's go online to Heath Sato.
Hi, Heath Sato, Ogden resident. I just wanted to say real quick that I would like us to take a look at some of our top paid employees and what the percentage over the median income is here. It's pretty staggering, like 5 to 10 times for a single person. So I'm not saying city employees don't earn their wages, but I think we've got some pretty high wages already. Thanks.
Thanks, Heath. Any others? All right.
I would now make a motion that we close the public hearing on this item.
Second.
You're quick. Like you said, you got to be fast.
Which one of you?
Jaburka.
All right.
I'll take it now. He can have the
All right.
next one.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Ritchie, second by Councilmember Chaburka to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, this is no action as well. I think both of those comments were good. I do want to say that there was extensive
Discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was the company we used? Not Evergreen. McGrath, thank you. There was a lot of discussion around the McGrath study and making sure that employees were in the right buckets and being paid competitively to what other cities and what even some of the private sector was. So that study is coming up for a refresh in another year, I think. So, all right. On to the budget. Janine, you quit walking away.
So with the budget, the council always adopts goals and guidelines. And the whole idea is to sort of communicate the council's expectations of how the budget is implemented. The budget is the primary policy document that the council sets. You know, how you spend your money is where you have your most important items, and it shows that. And so these are we want to make sure that the budget, the policies in the budget, reflect both the operating needs of the city, but also the desires of its residents. And we've used the 5-year strategic plan as a basis for determining those needs. And also, you have lots of discussions with your residents about what they'd like to see in the budget. So the guidelines generally remain consistent from year to year, unless there's significant policy changes. But the goals do change as projects are completed and the focus moves to other projects or priorities. So this is a red line version from last year. I just thought I would scroll through as I did in the work session. Just kind of a lot of these changes are just sort of technical in nature, maybe a word here, create a different sentence structure, those kinds of things. So there's not a lot of changes. You know, it talks about capital improvement plan, how the council expects notification of changes in programs, talks about the enterprise and special revenue funds and how they're supposed to operate, addresses utility fee management and the policies that we've established through a lot of those relate to bond requirements and also revenue sufficiency to maintain those utilities. Talk about how the council interacts with nonprofits. All of these things are things that are just in the goals in the guidelines. For the RDA, there's about the same. It just changed. Just made a change to how the financial reporting has taken place. So with the budget goals, again, there's just some technical things, but we have changed. So the priority, we're just going to continue implementing the Make Ogden plan. And again, pay parking is a priority just because we have bond payments coming due. Community safety, we want to maintain competitive public safety salaries and benefits. We added priority for parks and trails, and under the city images, we, talked about preparing for the Olympics and also addressing the survey regarding perceived safety concerns. Fiscal responsibility, those four, I should say, economic development, community safety, recreation, city image, and reputation, came straight from the 5-year strategic plan. The council added this fiscal sustainability and transparency as a goal because it's so important, right, that the city can pay its bills. And we all have been talking about developing this comprehensive financial sustainability model so that it will be more clear when you're making decisions what impact those decisions can have in the long term. And so I know that the administration and the council staff are both working on that. The strategic plan actually has expired, and there is a plan to update it. But because there's so many other things going on with the Zone Ogden, the rewrite of the general plan, and some other things, we decided to wait until those big projects are done so that they can be incorporated into the updated 5-year strategic plan. Okay. So this just outlines, the summary page sort of outlined the budget priorities. These are just some changes. Economic development sort of remained the same. Just added that we also want to see if we can increase sales tax revenue because that's generally money that people from outside are paying. Maintain competitive police and fire salaries. We noticed a big decrease in the turnover rates in those two for public safety, which has been a really great thing for the city. For the police department, we added including that we wanted to include working on a noise ordinance violations, and we will be evaluating the current noise ordinance and working with OPD to see if there's any changes either in changes to the ordinance that might be required or in the way the current ordinance is enforced.
Thank you.
With regard to with recreation, we finished the Marshall White Center, so that's coming off. There are plans to do some additional improvements at the 4th Street Ballpark. There's discussions about a North Side Recreation Center, so the city is evaluating that, and then added trails because we are providing some additional money to be made available to our partners for trail maintenance and construction. For city image and reputation, again, begin working on the 2034 Olympics. That will be here before we know it. Talked about the citizen survey and maybe explore options for combating negative perceptions relating to crime in Ogden. We are working on a follow-up survey, flash vote survey. We did get some great input from OPD on that, and we'll be working through that in the next couple of weeks. And then fiscal sustainability and transparency. Again, the comprehensive financial model, we just moved that up as a priority. It had been as an additional budget goal, but this year, especially with the potential impacts of increases to salaries, it becomes more important to have that information available, or that data really available. And then just create a financial dashboard. And I know the administrative staff already have talked to us about some great ideas they have for creating that financial dashboard and making what they already have a little more robust. So that's all of the proposed changes for the goals and the guidelines for the FY26 budget.
Great. Any questions for Janine? Councilmember Chaburka, we will get the dashboard. All right. We're going to take all three of these items before we do public hearings. So Glenn is up with the elected officials, non-merit, special employees, general employees, sworn, fire, and sworn police.
Thank you very much. Let's see, is the perfect. Thank you. So as you mentioned on the agenda, this presentation will cover the salary schedule item and the budget item, and those are 3E, 3, 2, and 3. So maybe we should plan that better next time so there's not that many threes. However, this is the final budget presentation, so you've seen most of this presentation a couple of times, so I'm going to go a little bit faster through the first half of this and maybe spend a little bit more time on the second half, focusing on some of the changes and some of the updates that have been made and which are proposed. So, as I mentioned, I've given this presentation a couple of times now over the last month or so, and so folks are generally familiar with some of the resources that are available. These really start with the mayor's presentation at the first part of May. The budget book that went along with that, the line items, the line item budgets, the agenda packet material for all of these meetings, all of these agenda items, department-specific budget information, all of our staff presentations, and then all of this information is available with audio and video recordings with both the work session and the regular meetings. And if you want to look for those, you can find those at these three places. So the city's main budget page and the agendas and minutes page, and then the council's budget page as well has some additional information. So as far as the review, you as a council have spent the last month and a half or so going through all of this information, going through a number of work sessions. It started on May 13th, and we did touch a little bit on it on May 6th, but we really got into it on the 13th, the 20th, and the 27th as well. And we also had our budget open house on that night. And then through the month of June, you've had additional work sessions to talk about the budget. So the 3rd, the 10th, and then tonight on the 17th before this meeting. As far as formal actions, your first formal action after accepting the budget for review was setting the public hearing on the tentative budget, and that happened on May 20th, and that was set for June 3rd. So on June 3rd, a couple of weeks ago, you did hold the public hearing, and you adopted the tentative budget, which is what the mayor presented to you. So that's the starting place for tonight's budget, for the final budget. Then you set the public hearing for a number of things that you've gone through already. That includes the capital improvement plan, the enterprise fund transfers, the executive municipal officers compensation, and then these two items, which are the salary schedule and the final budget. And that brings us to tonight. And again, you've gone through a number of these. So these last two, the salary schedule and the final budget, which include the Schedule A1 changes and the staffing documents, are what's left on your agenda as far as the budget goes. So as I mentioned, the mayor presented a budget to you on May 6th, and you reviewed that and adopted that as the tentative budget. So that's our starting place. So you can see that tentative budget number of just over $289 million. As I mentioned, that's the starting place for the final budget and any changes that are made with the Schedule A1. So that number, that $289 million, is just about 7.5% over what was adopted for fiscal year 2025. So as far as the Schedule A1 changes, you've had the chance to review those a couple of weeks ago. It was done in depth last week. We touched on it a little bit. Tonight we touched on it a little bit as well. And there are some other changes that you may want to propose with the final Schedule A1, and I'll get into that in just a minute. But to go over this at a relatively high level, again, this was done in much more detail a couple of weeks ago. There were some corrections to the location of some of the marketing funding, and then the transfer totals to the utility fund transfer that needed to be corrected. And I will note on the utility fund transfers, this was internal only. This did not affect the notice that went out or the final budget numbers that you held your public hearing on a little bit earlier tonight. So that was purely an internal correction. There was also some changes related to the new markets tax credits, related to the special purpose entity for the Marshall White Center. So those were payments for FY25 and FY26 that needed to be made, and then some grant match and recognizing some federal funds for some airport projects, and then transferring some money from one account to another for the radio replacement. And then a couple of other changes include the final numbers for the CDBG and home grants. So when the budget is put together toward the end of April, they estimate what they think they're going to get based on the formulas that they know for that federal funding. By the time we get to the final budget here, we know the final numbers for that. You've already adopted your annual action plan for the upcoming fiscal year. This just matches the city budget to that CDBG HUD budget with the annual action plan. And because we're doing well with all those CDBG funds and the con plan and the annual action plan, we no longer qualify for the exemption to the home match. So we have to supply that home match for those grants, and the proposal is to have that come out of the RDA Housing Fund. So that $100,000 recognizes that change. And these last two, we've touched on a little bit tonight already. The first one of those two is to increase that potential merit increase for employees from 1.5% to 2%. And that total change, and it is included in your Schedule A1, so you don't need to make any motions on that to include that. Total amount is just under $200,000 at $193,750. And the last item there is from Councilmember Graff's suggestion to put some additional money towards some trail work. So all of those things are included in your Schedule A1 that's included with your budget and the ordinance that's in front of you for consideration. So some of the other changes that we talked about earlier in the work session, there was some ARPA money that was allocated to a specific fund for future projects in the CIP fund last year. And in the proposed budget, it was allocated to a couple of different projects, and it sounded like the council wanted to have some additional conversations about the allocation of those funds. The total was $8 million. There was $5 million in a capital outlay for buildings related to the purchase of the Weber County Jail building, $2.5 million related to the Union Station campus improvements, and then $500,000 to an All Abilities Park. So that's the full $8 million. I've sent some potential motion language to you all if you want to make that change to that Schedule A1. And again, I'll touch on that again in just a minute. So with the Schedule A1 changes that I reviewed, excluding that $8 million that I just mentioned, you can see how that filters through the budget, through these major funds. It's $826,800. And you can see now the total proposed, again, excluding that $8 million that was talked about in the work session, would be just under $290 million. So $289,878,725. And that is just about 7.8% above what was adopted for last year. So that's what's in your Schedule A1 right now. Again, if you want to make the changes with the $8 million with the Capital Improvement Fund, that would be in addition to this. So this is what's in your packet right now. So as far as policies go, we didn't have any major policy changes proposed with the budget this year. There's no property tax increase, and what that means is that the city is planning to adopt the county-provided certified tax rate. So we are not proposing a change to the revenue or the certified tax rate with this budget. Typically, based on a state law change that happened a couple of years ago, we usually have the certified tax rate by now. So in the past, you have all been able to adopt the certified tax rate with the final budget. The county had requested a delay because they had seen some anomalies that they wanted to figure out, and that was a request to the state. So the state couldn't figure out the certified tax rate to get back to us in time to get that incorporated into your final budget. We did, however, get that late last week. Our office did see that early today. So we do have the number, but we don't have a lot of the analysis that we were hoping to have with that if you were to adopt that certified tax rate with the final budget. We've talked about this a number of times as well. The carryover of unused salary and benefit money to pay for some of the increases, the merit increases and the COLA increases. There's about $2 million of that unused wage and benefit funding that is proposed to roll over to pay for those for the FY26 budget. And with your proposal to go from 1.5% to 2%, that number bumps up to about 2.2 million instead of the 2 million that's up there. And as Janine went over the budget goals and guidelines, we didn't have any significant changes there. So I mentioned we don't have a lot of the information to go into great detail about the certified tax rate at this point. We will in a couple of weeks when that's brought to you for consideration. But I did want to touch on the certified tax rate because that is something that a lot of people talk about. So these are some slides I prepared when we went through the truth and taxation process last year. I thought they would be helpful this year. So just a couple of highlights of how the certified tax rate works, what it is, and what we can do about it. So just based on the state code definition, the certified tax rate is the tax rate that will provide the same revenue, the same property tax revenue to a taxing entity. And this is the city, school district, county, mosquito abatement, all of them, the same taxing entity as was budgeted by the taxing entity for the prior year. So essentially what that means is that certified tax rate allows that taxing entity to receive the same property tax revenue from the previous year plus new growth. So the new growth is on top of that number. So as the total taxable value increases of a city, that certified tax rate comes down to give us the same revenue. And if our total taxable value decreases, that certified tax rate will increase again to give us that same revenue. So there's no inflationary adjustment built into that calculation. So if we look at the trend, and this does include the certified tax rate that we just incorporated this morning, you can see that generally trend down, and that's because valuations have gone up. You can see the blue bars there. That's a percentage of increases that have been adopted above the proposed certified tax rate from the county. So the top orange line, that is the adopted certified tax rate over the last 13 years. So on the far right, you can see the certified tax rate that we received today, and that is 0.002189, and that's just a tick down from what was adopted by the council last year at the 2239 number. So again, we'll have more information on this for you in a couple of weeks. Any questions? Maybe I can stop there for a second before we go on to personnel changes. If not, I'll keep going.
Yeah, just help clarify this for me, if you could, please, Glenn. On some of the documentation that you showed, it showed that the pay increase for employees would be $193,750. I don't know why I'm fixated on this number.
Sure.
But then later you said approximately $200,000. And in our council work session documentation on page 7, it states that it's $219,325. So I'm not being critical.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, there's a couple of different numbers in there. So the carryover, when I said it was about 2.2, was just the estimate about 2.2. That 193,000 number, that's the exact number that's in the Schedule A1. If you track all of the changes, all of the increases and revenue and expenditure through that A1 document, that's the number that's in there.
4.5% additional merit increase.
Right, and that includes, that additional 0.5. Yep, that's what that is.
Then why do we have that on under 0.1 amendments by the council where it says $219,325?
Let's see. You said that was on page 7.
Page 7.
That.
It's $24,000, which in this size of a budget's not a lot, but for some reason it's.
That may have been an estimate at the time. That probably was a typo on my part in that memo.
Okay, not a problem. Thank you.
Yeah, I apologize, and thank you for catching that. That's a lesson I learned early on as a policy analyst here, to always try to do the math so you don't run into issues like that, but I must have missed that one, so I apologize for that.
Nope, not a problem.
Anything else before I move on?
Any other questions for Glenn?
Okay.
All right.
So as far as the personnel changes, again, we've covered this through the work session. So if anybody's interested in more detailed information, they can go back to those resources. But in the proposed budget, there are 3 positions that are proposed to be eliminated, 4 that are proposed to be added. So we would have a 1 net new position. And if authorized, we would have an even 700 authorized full-time employees in the city. So there are 12 reclassifications proposed, 8 title changes, and then 2 transfers between departments. And this last part, as we've talked about quite a bit, these are the increases. So the 2.97% cost of living increase for all employees, the now proposed 2% merit increase for non-sworn employees, and the 4% step for police and fire. And Janine did an excellent job of going over that. So with those, I also wanted to just spend a minute on this to talk about where somebody might find all of these changes through the budget, because the budget is multifaceted, it's complicated, it's big, there's a lot of numbers in there. And so I thought it would be helpful just to point out where somebody might see these changes as we talk about these personnel changes. So you'll see these changes in 3 primary places. So number 1, obviously, is the final budget. That's going to authorize us actually paying employees, expending the money. And so any increases from a merit or COLA increase are going to be reflected in those numbers in the final budget itself. But attached to the final budget, and if you look through your packet and you get to the ordinance, you'll see an attachment to your packet that is the staffing document. And that does get approved with that budget ordinance, but it is a separate document, and that approves all of those full-time positions. So if you look at that document, you'll see all of the titles, all of the positions, all the grades, and the number of those positions in that document. So to get to the full 700, you need to adopt the budget and the staffing documents, and it provides the grade for each position. So again, Janine went over this. If you have a position that's a grade 150 or a 160, that's where that shows that job at that grade. So another document that you need to approve that you will be considering tonight, but is a separate action, is the salary schedules. And that is what sets the range for that grade. So if you look at the salary schedules for this year, the FY26 compared to FY25, you'll see all of those ranges are up 2.97%. So that's where you can see that change. So I thought it would be helpful just to point out where all of those things exist and where all of those things live within the budget as we talk about the personnel changes. So as far as the projects go, Steve did a great job of going over the capital improvement plan. There are all of the projects that he mentioned for FY26 included in the budget. So you'll see this number in there, the $4.6 million from the CIP fund, $25 million from other funds. Those are capital projects, typically from our enterprise fund, so water, sewer, sanitary sewer, airport, those kinds of things. So we do have the 42 projects that were pointed out. 18 of them are one-time projects, 21 perpetual projects, and 3 ramp projects. So for tonight, I'm almost done, I promise. You do have, as I mentioned, the final budget that includes the Schedule A1 changes. So that's the $826,800 increase that's in your Schedule A1 document right now. The staffing documents that I mentioned, and the goals and guidelines on your agenda, you'll approve them separately, but they are incorporated by reference into the final budget. And then the salary schedules, and that sets the salary ranges for elected officials, the non-merit special employees, which includes the municipal officers, the regular or merit employees, and the sworn police and fire, with their STEP programs. So that's all I've got with this. If you want to have any more conversations about the CIP changes, additional changes that you were talking about in the work session, I'd be happy to help with that or answer any other questions that I could. If I can't answer them, then I'll recruit the smart people who are sitting on the back row back there.
All right. Any questions for Glenn? That was a lot.
That was a lot.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Don't go far. We might have some
Okay.
questions. All right. All right. This is a public hearing as well, so we're allowing you to come up and talk about the budget or these 3 items. So if you want, come up and state your name, and you have 3 minutes to talk.
Hi, Travis Pate again. So, third time's the charm, I guess. The dynamic for me, I look through, and again, it's an amazingly overwhelming, staggering document to approve, but I appreciate the piecemeal aspect that has been happening. I think also that part of the public hearing should still be work sessions. So if we do like public notices and some of those types of things, whether it's be road closures or zoning changes, that we just say public hearing, but then also work session, that's included on notifications to the public. So that if I weren't here last week or if I wasn't here earlier today, that I kind of could know and get as informed as you guys have been having the opportunity. Because I think a lot of times questions from residents can be answered in those fairly simply, and then you can get to the meat and potatoes of it. Such as, to me, the goals and guidelines give us an opportunity to update the general plan. And we say, okay, we're going to do this much in-house, $750,000, and we're going to budget $750,000 for a consultant. And yet, when did any of you last open the current general plan and say, let's look at the high priorities that are in the current plan. Let's look at the medium priorities. Let's look at where we are. And so that when the new general plan is presented, we can say, hey, we've yet to meet these goals. We need to do an individual audit of ourselves with regards to the general plan and the budget. If there's things that we were over on, such as, to me, I feel it was an absolute tragedy that we didn't buy the school district property at Grandview Acres. Absolute tragedy. I think we could have turned that to the citizenry and said, do you guys want to bond for this $4 million? So we can have this extra property that's technically land banked east to the Intermountain Healthcare property and even further east to Weber State. They're now grading that like clear up. And yet did we say, oh, what retaining wall do you have? What protections of our park? Because our parks and in our general plan, we have a guarantee of view corridor and vista preservation. We also have a promise of light. In the winter months, we now tower all this new housing development right over our park. What's that going to do to the park? Because they've just changed the entire topography of that acreage. And so I think that a lot of the long-term aspects things need to come into play. We're saying, oh, yeah, we need to start for paid parking. The one advertisement for the Ogden Mall and the mall parking lot was no paid parking. So, yeah, if we're going to do it on street, then what is the cost differential of doing that in-house versus having someone else do it? And also, can we get the film commissions from TV royalties for the TV show Parking Wars? Because we're going to have a lot of out-of-town upset guests. We know how it was with the marathon years ago, and even recently, we're just beat up all our visitors. I'm not coming back to that town, you know. So I think that's part of the thing. Anyway, so I appreciate your time on that one. And if we say the A1 schedules, some people might prefer Heinz 57 schedules. No, just kidding. Sorry. So
thanks, Travis.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Anybody else? Sorry, I was still on Heinz.
Giving you a minute to absorb that. Deborah Darrington. Some of these things brought up, I don't necessarily have them fall within the budget, but they are some questions and concerns that I have as what I hope to be a long-term continuing citizen here of Ogden. All of the advertising that I see for Ogden says O-Town. It's part of what I love because O-Town is a little bit bigger than a village that I came from in Syracuse, which is way outgrowing itself, but we're smaller than a city. I hope that as we're making these plannings, or are planning things for our residents, is that we remember that O-Town means a lot to all of us. To find a place that's big enough to have our needs filled, but small enough that we can have our wants of Topper's Bakery, I greatly miss. Those are the things that brought me here and kept me here. And I will touch on this part with crime because it did come up and it's very important to me right now. I noticed on my way back from one of our business dealings, I dropped an employee off and was coming back and all of the corridors were blocked by the police. And so as I realized that every single road was blocked, I pulled over to just say, hey, do we have an active shooter? What's going on here? And it wasn't. There was someone they had in their custody, and I guess she had a warrant for arrest and got away. But then later on in that day, I noticed that we had a surplus of police that were hanging out in one of my vacant parking lots. So I again inquired with one of the officers, and it was an interesting conversation. He said, I'm happy to leave, but he said, we have found and kind of spread word through the department that we can get anywhere in our jurisdiction under 3 minutes from this location. And I said, that's fantastic. I love the security. You're more than welcome to stay here. And we see 2 to 3 here. What was concerning about that conversation is he said the majority of our calls are at the top of this street, which is 25th Street. It was Harrison. And the other was at Monroe. And I am dead center in the middle of that in a very, very beautiful historic district that I hope the city takes pride in and recognizes how important that is to the city, how expensive it is for those of us who have invested in there, and how important it is that we don't have these other entities encroaching to where what I found is the corridor for the bus has become a main hub of crime. We have people sleeping in the bus stops. Quickly, I know I'm running out of time, but one suggestion that I thought might help is because we have these 2 apartment complexes that are monopolizing a lot of our police officers' time on calls, is perhaps when there is a surplus of calls, I don't know if it's legal or a possibility to pass a policy where the owners of those would have to have their own security guard there. I know RC Willie's has that for their own security, et cetera. So possibility on that, and I'll use my 3 minutes in public comment later.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Chair, I'd make a motion that we close the public hearing on these 3 items.
All right.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Heyer, second by Councilmember Ritchie to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We're going to take these one by one.
Chair, I'd make a motion then that we adopt proposed resolution 2025-12.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Ritchie, and second by Vice Chair Heyer to adopt proposed resolution 2025-15. This is a roll. 12. This is a roll call vote. Thank you.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Aye.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Councilmember Graff.
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer.
Aye.
Chair White.
Aye. That passes. All right. Next is the elected officials, non-merit special employees, general employees, sworn fire, and sworn police.
And I do have a comment, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to say congratulations to the city administration and staff for putting together a budget. And they've just done a phenomenal job. For your information, Travis, we've been reviewing that in work sessions and in this meeting, our council meetings, for several months now. And it's been kind of labor intensive. But nonetheless, I'm pleased with all of that. I will be voting in favor of this next initiative, but I do have some reservations that give me heartburn, and so I wouldn't be fair to myself or to Ogden City constituents or taxpayers if I didn't bring up some of my concerns, and that is just a minor thing, that 2% or that 0.5% merit increase that the council added to the merit increase of 1.5% that was proposed by the administration. And I just want to point out that in several studies, I've looked some up, Lending Tree,
states that 65% of employees across this country will receive pay increases this year. That means 35% will not. Lending Tree also shows that those pay increases will be 3 to 3.5%. Payscale.com shows an average wage increase nationally is 3.5%. I like Zion's Bank. It's one that I monitor for my own personal business use, and it's slightly higher than 3.5%. The reason I bring that up is because our proposal puts our pay increases for our employees with the administration's proposal with the COLA and the merit increases is 4.47%. So that's almost a whole percent higher than what national averages are showing. And then in addition to that, we've proposed through that Schedule A amendment that it go up an extra 0.5%, and that puts it at almost 5%, 4.97, which is pretty significant in my book. But the thing that gives me the heartburn is not just the one time, but the compounding effect that has over many years. Every single year, we still will be paying that additional pay increase year after year. So that's my concern. And the fact of the economy right now, there seems to be some uncertainty. There's a lot of volatility potentially that's out there. And that just gives me that heartburn that I just want to bring up. And then today we have presented to us that the certified tax rate is lower than what we expected, means that we'll have lower revenue coming in for this year for the city as well. So that concerns me. The other aspect of that concerns me is that we have huge investments that we've made in the Wonder Block and in Union Station and also in the Marshall White Center. And we've bonded for that. We have potential all figured out how those are going to be paid for, but we've undertaken huge expenses for our city, and these are good times. There's some, as I mentioned earlier, some uncertainty, but it gives me concern that we have a lot of, that we're spending a lot. And so I just bring that up. My concern is just financial accountability and financial responsibility long term, and not just for today. And that's what concerns me, is that compounded effect. So the other thing I just want to conclude with is we just approved that McGrath study last year, and that gave us a really good direction on where we should go on average market compensation. And to my mind, we've just surpassed that a little bit. So in view of perhaps I'm not going to be very popular with city employees, I just prefer to err on the side of conservatism as opposed to being a little more liberal. And $200,000, that is not a huge impact on the budget, but compounded it is an impact. And so I just have that uncertainty that I want to express, and I'm going to vote for this budget. That's what's proposed before us today, but I just want to express my reservations at the same time. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Right. Any other discussion before we move?
Chair, I'll make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2025-17.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Heyer, second by Councilmember Blair to adopt proposed ordinance 2025-17. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Aye.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Councilmember Graff.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer.
Aye.
Chair White.
Aye, that passes. All right.
Chair, regarding the FY26 budget, I move to approve ordinance 2025-19 with direction to amend Schedule A1 to move $8 million from the CIP non-departmental fund back to the allocated future projects fund in the CIP fund.
Second.
Discussion?
Sure.
I have some reservations about removing the ARPA money and moving it, taking its line item away. And I can't really talk openly about a lot of these things because there are negotiations that are ongoing. But I think it would seriously handicap those in our administration that are negotiating that issue. if you will consider the potential unintended consequences that might cause. If Ogden, it is crucial. It's mandatory. I don't know what of a stronger word, that Ogden obtain that building. If it's not us, think of who else might get it. And I think you wouldn't like that. The unintended consequences are too high. I think we ought to leave that in the line item budget and take the I think it's, what was it, $3 million, and do what Commissioner Graff said. But I think that $5 million better stay in the budget with its line item.
Other discussion?
No, I definitely appreciate that perspective. I think, any of us would make ourselves available for even an emergency closed session to discuss that, or we're available, to discuss that too. So I don't have the same heartburn about it.
Okay, if the mayor chimes in, I think he's probably got an insight that maybe we don't have. Maybe he's willing to impart of that.
Sure, thanks. I wasn't privy to the discussion in the work session around this, so my apologies if I'm being repetitive or redundant in any of the discussion that took place. But the discussion around purchasing that building back there began probably the day after the bond failed in 2023. That was a grand package. I think it was around $98 million total that the voters rejected at the time. So the revenue that would go to the county to address future needs at the jail facility for the entire county, most especially the city, since we're the biggest city in the county, kind of stalled there. But what didn't change is the need. There are needs. The jail facility's crowded and not well positioned right now to provide for mental health needs. We no longer have the option or opportunity for work release, and we are struggling to provide for winter overflow and summer shelter. And so we did come back in last fall in the December in a work session to discuss the $8 million that are being discussed tonight. In that, the language in our transmittal said that Weber County Correctional Facility building acquisition for $5 million. Ogden City has been working with Weber County to potentially purchase the Kiesel Correctional Facility building located next to the Ogden City Municipal Building. The $5 million would be transferred to the CIP fund to be used to acquire the building. That has been the goal all along. The idea being that we lead out in an effort to purchase the building, excuse me, to demolish the building. It's an aging building that is nearing, if not at the end of its life cycle, is in need of a lot of repair, and it is also standing in the way of our downtown economic goals and our municipal block plans. So this has been a years and years and years discussed building. I would hate for me to have to stall out on the negotiations and discussions that we're having. It has been a work in progress, I'll say, but if you guys choose to remove it for later consideration, I think it will remove any negotiating leverage I currently have to execute on a project that we want to hopefully to accomplish. If anybody has any questions about that project that I can answer, I would be happy to. Whatever you guys decide tonight, I will work within those parameters. I just ask that you give me an opportunity to succeed.
Chair, I'd also like to kind of mention, I think it's important to note that where it is listed as a line item, if it doesn't go for that purpose, it still comes back and gets used for whatever else. But I think if I think it's a high enough priority that it stay as a line item in the budget until we either use it or it comes back because we couldn't use it.
Any other discussion?
I just feel like we're missing the opportunity to have a more significant conversation about the property and the money and I just feel like that would be something I would welcome as part of our process in considering something like this. That's kind of where I'm coming from with that. And I don't rank the priority of that acquisition any lower than the mayor does or Vice Chair Heyer. I think it's a really important thing that we consider, but I think we owe it to ourselves as a community to really have a thorough discussion about it all. And I'll, as Angela said, want to have an emergency work session on it. It doesn't have to linger.
Is there just a question on, is there a noticing requirement to move those, to do that budget amendment if we, at a later date? Is that something that would potentially, I'm just curious how it would prevent or slow down the negotiation process?
It's 2-week notice. I mean, it's actually 10 days, but it takes 2 weeks in meetings to notice a budget amendment, which is what it would be. We don't have a meeting next week. The next meeting is July 1st. So we would have time to notice it for July 1st, but maybe have discussion. We could also have a discussion that night.
I just want to express my support with Vice Chair Heyer's recommendation and support the mayor's perspective as well.
Well, and I guess I'm going to just say, I would hope that you can have ongoing discussions, and I would hope that the discussions with the commissioners would, they could understand the fact that we need to look at the budget as well and to be understanding of, what we're buying or what we're offering or those kind of things. I don't think that it's fair for us to just put this in a bucket without having any discussion or very little discussion about that building. So I would hope that there would be some respect on both sides to negotiate in good faith on our end as well from them. So.
Well, call the question.
Janine has another.
I was just going to say you have a motion in a second.
Yep. So we have a motion. We have a motion by Councilmember Graff, second by Councilmember Ritchie to adopt proposed ordinance 2025-19.
Actually, I think the motion was to amend.
With amendments, yeah.
With the amendment, I was getting there. To adopt the budget with the amendment of allocating the future, putting $8 million from Schedule A1 into a allocated future projects bucket. Does that make sense to you guys?
It goes from the budget into the A1.
Okay.
Right? As future projects.
Good with that? It's a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Councilmember Graff.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Nay.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer.
Nay.
Chair White.
Aye. That passes. All right.
Chair White, can I make a quick comment? Sure. Like I said, whatever you guys decided, I'll work within the parameters of that. I want to make it crystal clear about something, that what I'm proposing and what we are proposing and considering is to purchase the building, knock it down, make that space a portion of our downtown economic development and revitalization, to be a component of our downtown square, potentially even playing a role in our Olympic, potentially a metals plaza in our future, to really create a space that the community can celebrate. That is the intended use of the funds for us. Anything other than that is contrary to any goals that we have as a city, and would undermine any economic goals that we have, and any leverage that anyone else may have by delaying the negotiation could open the door for other opportunities that I hope would not come to fruition. But you have my commitment to work with the commission in the continuing discussions, but I want to make it really clear that what I am proposing to do with that building, and it is to knock it down, to restore the surface and the space that's there, and eventually include it in a broader plan for downtown economic development. Any balance of funds would be part of a negotiation or discussion, or a partnership, I should say, with the county that would be geared toward the needs that have long been identified by the county, that also provide for needs, long-term needs and short-term needs for the city, including winter overflow, summer beds for Code Red and Code Blue, to be in addition to and leverage for county discussions for mental health facilities there, as well as potential for work release, so that we can make that an opportunity so that everybody isn't just jailed. They have an opportunity to work and to provide for themselves and to create a constructive future moving forward. That's the proposal. Anything else, any other rumor is not in the plans or in my proposal ever. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I would probably think that all of us would agree with that.
Yep.
I don't think that there's any disagreement. I think that mostly what it has to do with just the opportunity to understand what that's all for. So I appreciate your comments. And again, I hope that it's, I hope that it doesn't hinder any ongoing negotiations. And I would trust that the commissioners would understand that. Public comments. This is an opportunity to come up and address the council for anything that maybe hasn't already been said.
That was fast.
No one else? All right.
Hi, Travis Pate. I wanted to just celebrate one of the things that I've seen happen in the community recently, and it's the My Hometown Ogden. And I think that there's a lot of great things happening through that program. And I think that however the partnership works, I know that on the phone number there's a chance to report a code violation, or so to speak, rat out a neighbor or something else that's not quite right, versus some other option like the 211 and other things that are out there in the community to say, is there a need for a resource? Yeah. Oh, wait, a neighborhood dumpster first, before I just beat up my neighbor that I didn't even bother to knock on the door and see that maybe there was a death in the family, or there was some other extenuating circumstance as to why their yard's not mowed. And to try to encourage us as a citizenry, as well as a city, to be neighborly. And so I think that, to me, there's just some of the options might be, do you have a code violation, versus do you have a neighborhood improvement idea, how we can help your neighbor? Because it's 5 signatures for a dumpster. I mean, those types of things that I think that instead of just the bully pulpit aspect that we might have with some of the code enforcement things. And I think even particularly the almost targeting that had happened in the past. We had a neighbor that was 2 senior citizens, and we were working together as a neighborhood. We're working on the dumpster. We're doing everything else. But meanwhile, code enforcement came in at that time and just kept following these people and just kind of almost pouncing. And I thought, it's already being handled, because they didn't give us a chance as a neighborhood to try to help our neighborhood. And so that was the part to me. And then also just the aspect, if we're going to go back to the paid parking, some of those other things, if some of the higher density things that got the decrease in parking because they're, quote, next to a bus route, if the behemoth that's now being rebuilt on 25th Street takes all the parking that it needs, right through Electric Alley and those types of things, I think we've lost something. We've lost the potential for those businesses that have tried so hard down 25th Street. Oh, we've just given all your parking to that particular development. That's pretty tragic. And so I think that we need to look at some of those types of things towards impact fees. If you're going to put the density in and we're going to waive your parking and say 1.5 parking stalls, even though we know each one of your tenants is going to have at least 2, I've never seen a half a car. So I appreciate your time. And then I said, again, the Grandview Acres, if we just double check that there's some reinforcement, some retaining walls or anything else. Jackson Avenue was completely rebuilt to connect to Park Avenue. We went right into the river with that, reinforced it. Monroe Boulevard, right down into Sullivan Hollow. We closed the Sullivan Hollow Road and widened that outward. So there's a lot of things that we've done as a city that's smart and expanding. But when developers come in and just change the grade and topography, we need to make sure that everybody downhill from them is protected. Thank you.
Thanks, Travis.
Deborah Darrington, and I will say I'm feeling pretty good about my investment here today. Generally, I give an hour to 3 hours of my time for an exchange of 3 minutes of speaking, and I've got 9 minutes today for my time investment, so I'm feeling pretty good. This is on hopefully a positive note moving forward for our younger citizens. I moved my little family here from rural Syracuse in 2013, 2014. My youngest children were 19, and I had 100% of my 6 children and their spouses, those that were adults and married, and my little grandbabies were all born here. Unfortunately, all but one adult child has moved away, and she and her husband are expecting their first child, and unfortunately are looking for property in Mountain Green instead of remaining here. As I looked back on that, I remember the excitement of my children as we moved here and getting together in the Pingree Mansion or in my home for neighborhood watch and neighborhood ideas and conversations. I remember the illustrious ideas that we had for Lester Park and how my children looked forward to that. They're 19 going on 20 now, so I don't think a splash pad is really in their agenda any longer. My grandkids have moved to North Carolina, Clinton, Morgan, and so no longer do I have grandkids that are going to participate in that, but I'm sure others do. People keep having babies and they keep needing those things. So some of the things that I saw great potential when I first moved here was the art district, the historic district, the Nine Rails district, the swimming hole, which I thought was the most clever use of a natural resource, but now it's surrounded by River Parkway and doesn't quite feel like a community swimming hole any longer back behind Walmart. So my concern and question with you is, please, please be very mindful of the residents that have planted their roots here and that are trying so hard to raise their families, their grandbabies here. Don't lose sight of those things that make us unique, those things that bring people into Ogden and beg them to buy a home and stay. I do hope that Lester Park's budget in 2027 comes to fruition, because we have watched that time and time again. I think my phone number's still on the bathroom, that if you need help, call Sister Peterson. I have since had my name changed. I'm no longer serving in that capacity, but I'm pretty sure I'm still getting phone calls from people who need my help. I'm happy to give it. But that's all I have to say on that. And also, thank you for everything that you're doing. It is a fun town. Let's keep it that way.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah. Good comments.
All right. Seeing no one online. Council comments from the mayor.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to thank our administrative staff for all the work you guys put into the budget. This has been months and months and months. If I were better with time and calendars, I'd count the months, but I'm not. Anybody that knows me knows how much I struggle with time and calendars. But the amount of effort put into supporting me and supporting us, the city, supporting the council, supporting the residents of the city has just been incredible. So I offer you my thanks and my deepest and sincerest love for all of the work that you guys do for all of us. And the same sincerity and appreciation goes to the council and council staff for the amount of work you guys put into it, and the sincerity of the effort you put in to truly dive into it and to understand is not lost on us. And I just, on behalf of the administration, want to thank you for the hard work you guys are doing and the good work that you've done with the budget. This is a very healthy process and a healthy dialogue that we have here. And I get to interact with a lot of different mayors and councils around the state, and I just want to say that I'm very thankful for the collegial relationship that we have here, for the dynamic and the culture of not just collaboration and communication, but just giving each other grace and an opportunity to do your part, to do our part, and to all do our best. And so I would dare say that we have the best council and the best dynamic with administration in the state of Utah. And I think that that is a competitive advantage for our people and for our city. It is a breath of fresh air in a time and in a country where that is not always the case. So I appreciate that. I wanted to let you guys know I did get a couple emails. I know that you guys are as well. There's a lot of pressure and concern around public lands being disposed of or sold currently. This was actually one that, again, harkens back to my prior career. If you didn't know, I had a job that was a hybrid position that liaised with the governor's public lands policy coordinating office. I'm very well attuned to the tactics and the proposals out there over time, and where I'm currently a lot of confusion right now on what is and isn't being proposed. So I wanted to let you guys know that we have engaged our Washington, D.C. lobbying team for input to help us find the specific language that's being proposed within the big, beautiful bill, so that we can put some clarity to what is and what isn't being proposed. What I think is happening is there is some conflation between past public lands initiatives that did propose that federal lands were transferred to the state. I'm noticing in the current proposal and the current concern that areas like the roadless area of the Book Cliffs, for example, is being discussed as disposal, which I've never seen the Book Cliffs roadless area categorized as disposal. So those kinds of things, as I've looked into it, are giving me a lot of pause or concern. I want to make sure I'm really clear before I make strong statements or activate our lobbying team for changes to any bills. But wanted to give you guys the certainty that I did spend some time on it today, that our staff dug into it some, and that our lobbying team is engaged to give us clarity. And when I have clarity, we'll be happy to report back on what is and isn't included. I just want to make sure we're rooted in facts. Code enforcement targeting, I think it was Travis that brought it up. That's an issue. I don't tolerate any targeting that isn't justified. So if that is happening, I need to know about it. But I don't think that's anything that we're currently doing. But if there's an instance where someone feels that way, I'd like to know so I can make sure that's not the case. In terms of parking, the concern that was expressed about giving away businesses parking on one side to fulfill development on the other. We've actually been deeply engaged. Councilmember Chaburka has participated as well. We've done a lot of listening to business needs on both sides of the street because their dynamics are very different. But I do feel that there's a lot of agreement and understanding as to what the priority needs are from business owners generally. I don't know if there's any total consensus on anything related to parking other than something's got to change. We're having struggles. We keep week after week talk about events, and there's more and more people coming to our downtown. Businesses are definitely feeling that as well. So that's probably the only consensus, is that we've got to make changes and manage the challenge. Excuse me. Deborah Darrington, your comments were poignant and on point. I think the things you asked us to consider are the same reasons why, at least speaking for myself personally, are why I have committed my life's work to this city and this community. I love it dearly and deeply and wish to see it stewarded in the best way possible. So that's an easy commitment to make. I also wanted to share some remarks. I know that there's a lot of pressure and questions out there around immigration. I released a statement last week, which I hope was helpful and did provide some clarity. The overwhelming majority of the input that I've gotten has been positive on the statement. One thing that I've learned in this job is the more you share, the more questions there will be. And I don't think that we'll ever answer every question, but I did prepare some more remarks to share tonight that I hope will help with clarity. I want to start by reaffirming the role of Ogden City and the Ogden City Police Department when it comes to immigration enforcement. As I already stated, we do not enforce federal immigration law. The law is very clear on this. We do not have the legal authority to do so. It's being suggested that Ogden City ought to be stepping in to protect our people from ICE. And I just want to say, if anybody believes that ICE is violating yours or someone else's rights, that there are legal pathways to defend your rights. That accountability for that belongs in the courts, not in the hands of local police officers being asked to act outside of their authority. So the notion of using our officers to work against federal agents is not how our republic ensures constitutional accountability. That would undermine both the rule of law and the integrity of our institutions. What is our job, however, is enforcing criminal law, such as murder, assault, sexual assault. These are serious crimes, and it is our job to enforce against those. If someone is in this city committing crimes and harming our people, we do have the authority, and we do have the resources, and we have a track record and the greatest police department in the state of Utah, no doubt about it, to pursue them and to bring them to justice. And the men of OPD go to sleep every night, and they come to work every single day, knowing that they have my full and unwavering support in enforcing criminal activities in this city consistent with the Constitution. So let me be crystal clear. We are not a sanctuary city for criminals. We are a constitutional city with zero tolerance for crimes against our people. That means that I will not politicize our police department. I will not ask them to enforce laws without legal authority to do so. I won't speculate about endless hypotheticals. I won't capitulate to political pressure. I will not isolate us from law enforcement partners who share our mission to fight crimes in protection of our people. And I will not fall into partisan traps designed to divide us. My job is not to take sides as the mayor. It is to protect our people by upholding the Constitution of the United States. These are the lines that I have drawn. I will hold them. And that is not evasion. It's not a lack of courage. And it's not avoiding tough questions. It's disciplined, principled, and constitutionally guided leadership. And as your mayor, I am prepared to walk alone, which means taking on criticism, staying disciplined in the face of dysfunction, and not because I don't hear from you or from the people that we serve, but because I am a leader, and as your mayor, there come times that I must walk alone so our entire city can walk in peace. That's the kind of leadership I believe this moment and this position demands, and that's how I intend to keep our community and our police officers safe, peaceful, and grounded in the rule of law. Thank you.
All right. Any comments from the council members?
Chair, I'll take a stab at it. Deborah, I'm one of those people. I was born in the park up on Harrison, and I've lived here my whole life with a short, brief stint away, but I've lived here my whole life, and that's exactly the Ogden that I love. And I've seen a lot of changes, which are normal, but I do want it to be our hometown. I want it to be as much like it has been as it can be going forward. And Travis, that code enforcement thing is always a real sticky issue, and that's one of the metrics that I always consider when we're considering a new ordinance. And that is this just something that one neighbor's going to beat their other neighbor over? And I hope we don't do that. We as a council sponsor, we have some money that's available for people to come together as a neighbor, as neighborhoods, that we hope will be used for those kind of purposes, so that, if somebody needs their lawn mowed, somebody can. If we need a dumpster, we can come together and get one. And, those are the kind of things that make Ogden great. And we hope that it will continue to do so. I love Ogden. I am such a cheerleader for Ogden. That's why I've run for this office. I've been in the service of Ogden for well over 30 years. So on the council and the planning commission prior to that. So thank you for being here and saying what you've said. I'm with you. Kind of like old Red Green used to say, we're in this together and I'm pulling for you.
I got something. Yeah. Last week was Ogden City held its annual Partners in Success golf tournament, and it's one of my favorite days. I was able to talk to some former employees and every year I get to talk and meet new people that partner and help Ogden City with various projects and various items resources that we need. And I'm always amazed at how excited these community partners are to be able to come and play in that tournament. It's fun to hear their experiences. It's fun to hear what departments they've worked with, hear the success stories they've had here in Ogden, and how they circle this date and how they plan every year to come back. And I think last week was our biggest. I think it was our biggest event yet. Most teams, I believe, is what I heard. So I think it's great. I'm amazed at I learned a little bit of the background of why we put the tournament on to begin with, and to think about where we were then and where we are now. I'm just amazed at how far we've come. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to showcase our city, for us to showcase some of our amenities, and for us to showcase the people here that represent Ogden City. And I appreciate that the administration and all those employees allow us to be part of it. And I'm appreciative of all of the effort. It's a big ordeal. It's a big ordeal, and a lot of hours go into it. And I'm appreciative of how serious we take that day, and how wonderful Ogden presents itself that day and every day. So I just want to pass that along. I think it's great when we have the opportunity to showcase and tell our story and kind of brag about some of our successes, and we do that and do it well. And I'm thankful that I get to be part of it, or that we get to be part of it. It was fun to see other council members there. It's fun to be able to take part in it, and I just wanted to share that I appreciate that. I appreciate that experience, and I appreciate that Ogden City finds those opportunities to give back to those that help us throughout the year. And so I think it's a wonderful event.
Great. I just want to say, Mayor, thank you. You did not hear probably my comment earlier in the work session, but we are dealing with decades of a failed leadership on a federal level, and it's coming back to us and to try to figure out how to do this. And I really appreciate that what you said, because I am concerned that we would have our officers get unfocused and go in the wrong direction. And I really appreciate what you just said. So thank you very much for that. And know that you've got 7 of us here that will probably push you to still sit alone up there every once in a while. So, but I just wanted to thank you for that, and to know that all of us are trying to listen to the citizens and other elected officials and what they're doing. And so we have a lot of feedback as well. And so whatever we can do to jointly do this, we'll be a better team going forward if we can all do this together. So we don't want you to have to take all the arrows. So any other?
Can I just make a quick comment as well? I appreciate all that has been shared already, and I think it is appropriate to recognize there is a lot of fear and anxiety out there, and it's frustrating and challenging. It seems like I've heard a lot of, well, this is what I've heard. And so there is a lot of, I don't know if that's helpful sometimes to without having exact facts on what's going on. So I just, would say, number one, let's work together. It seems like communication's always the key. The more we can understand and what everyone's going through and what's actually happening, the better. But also I appreciate, Mayor, your comments and your leadership and defining, the purpose and the roles of the public safety officers and those that are out there. And so again, it's an ongoing conversation. I'm sure there'll be more to come on that, but and I think it's also appropriate to recognize that there is a lot of anxiety out there, and anything we can do to lower that temperature and help people to feel safe and good, I think that's also appropriate. So,
great. Any more comments?
Yeah, Madam Chair. This is my second go-round with the budget. Last year was a learning curve, and this year has been a learning curve again. I just kind of watch and learn. But it's pretty amazing to me that we've been mentored along both by the city administrative staff and also by the city council staff. And I just want to say thanks to both because it's very helpful for us. This is not my full-time job. So it's always nice when you, Janine, and when Glenn and others come up and do the presentations and add the clarity that sometimes we need to make a good informed decision. And so on behalf of our whole council, we want to say thanks to you for the effort and time that you put into preparing us to make good decisions for our budget for the city. So thank you.
And you don't have to remember the $197,328 or whatever that was. All right, any more?
Chair, can I make two brief comments quickly?
Start the clock.
I want to say that I made the commitment to really look at the budget and to make refinements, consolidations, to address the needs, services, and priorities that I had as an administration that you clearly share in prioritization for communication and engagement, et cetera, without raising taxes. That there was one position that was added. It was a response to an audit recommendation that we wanted to make sure that we were responsive to. But that if you see imperfections in the budget, just know that this is never ending. I am going to transition and continually push the administration and our budget toward efficiency, toward deliverable of services and results. Over time, what is happening on larger scales is often reckless. It comes with a completely different set of consequences that this approach that I'm proposing, excuse me, seeks to avoid. So the effort continues. And finally, I would be the most important thing I need to say today is thank you to OPD. The men and women of the Ogden Police Department stepped up and performed professionally, admirably, just as I knew they would. And I cannot tell you how proud I am of them to have the most professional police department in the state of Utah, if not the nation, to have the men and women of OPD who stand with integrity every day, to go into an event like we did over the weekend, having the confidence in our police officers. You cannot put a price on that, you guys. These are serious times. We need serious people, and I'm so thankful that we've got a serious police department that put everything they have into the work that they do every single day. So to the men and women of the Ogden Police Department, I thank you. I respect, I admire you. I love you deeply. And it is my honor to be your mayor.
All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Heyer, second by Councilmember Myers to adjourn. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have one more before you pack up, guys.
Oh, that's right. Oh, thank you for the reminder. I'm getting so excited.
I know it.
I'm going to give her an opposed one time just to see what she does with it.
I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it. All right. All right. Good evening and welcome to the special redevelopment agency meeting of June 17th, 2025. Please note that all board members are present. With that, we have a public hearing for the proposed fiscal year 2024-2025 budget amendment for the Forest Service building. Coralie.
It'll be really quick and I don't have to switch slides this time. Okay. So when we initially did the budget opening for the down payment for the Forest Service building and the RDA for $360,000. This proposed budget opening is to recognize the remainder of the bond proceeds and the amount of $3,358,000, and those will be used for the purchase of the building and also the issuance costs. Any questions? I told you I'd be quick.
All right. Any questions for Coralie?
And so it's proposed that you adopt the resolution.
All right. No questions. Thanks. This is a public hearing. If there's anyone that wants to talk about the budget amendment for the Forest Service building, please come up and do so. Except for Travis.
Yes. But she capitalized on the 9 minutes. So I'm like, I'm going to go for 12. So I appreciate that. The Forest Service building, I think, is near and dear. My mother had the chance to work there temporarily until they built the federal building. But 25 years as a Forest Service brat. And we even adopted my stepdad from the Forest Service, and he later became a great benefit for not only IRS, but Mr. Nadolski said for the city, as they showed up for his birthday a year ago. And this past January just showed up and said, yeah, he and Justin. I mean, that's just dedication to your workforce and to your friends. And so the Forest Service building, also Leslie Hodson, my house is a Leslie Hodson Smith home on Jefferson Avenue. So I think the fact that we can keep this as an asset and build it back into the community, obviously celebrate this building, Forest Service building, Ogden High School, that same era. It's just tremendous to me. So I think I'd like to say, yes, please vote for this, because I think it's just going to be a great continuation of something that's outdated and antiquated, so to speak, because the federal government changes guidelines, everything else. We might even buy a federal building across the street, but this one for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no more movement, I'd make a motion we close the public hearing on this item.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Hires, second by Board Member Chaburka to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right.
And I'd also make a motion that we adopt proposed resolution 2025-13.
Second.
I have a motion by Vice Chair Heyer and second by Board Member Chaburka to adopt proposed resolution 2025-13. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Blair.
Aye.
Board Member Chaburka.
Aye.
Board Member Graff.
Aye.
Board Member Myers.
Aye.
Board Member Ritchie.
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer.
Aye.
Chair White.
Aye, that passes. All right. Comments from the Executive Director?
None at this time. Thank you.
Comments from board members?
I have a comment. Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion by Board Member Ritchie, second by Board Member Myers to adjourn. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm not even going to say.
Don't even do it.
All right.
Don't do it.
All right. We are adjourned. Good job, you guys.